When the heavy wooden door closed behind me that morning, hundreds of eyes immediately shifted toward me. My son Marcus curled his lip in irritation, then leaned in to whisper in his wife Celeste's ear. They both let out a faint laugh as if my presence were nothing more than a joke. I walked slowly past the rows of benches, the click of my heels on the cold stone floor sounding in steady beats, tightening the air even further. Then something strange happened. The judge's silver-hair austere face looked up at me. For a moment he froze, his hand trembling slightly on the stack of files. His eyes widened as if he could not believe what he was seeing. "It's her," he murmured, voice catching. The entire room seemed to stop breathing. A buzz of whispers spread at once. Spectators turned to one another while Celeste frowned in confusion. Marcus cleared his throat, trying to regain composure, but I could see the rare flicker of unease in his eyes. For months, my son and his calculating wife had prepared to make me the weaker party to seize what did not belong to them. They thought I was just a frail, aging mother with no strength left to resist. Yet in that instant when the judge recognized me, the tide began to turn. No one in that room, not even my own son, truly knew who I was. They didn't know I had once sat in this very place decades ago, that I had watched and quietly helped those who now held power. And they certainly did not expect that small, long-ago acts of kindness would become the key to protecting me today. I took my seat at the defendant's table, fingers interlaced in my lap, outwardly calm though my heart was pounding. I knew the fateful moment had begun. This hearing would decide not only the fate of the house, but whether a mother could keep her dignity after a lifetime of sacrifice. My name is Evelyn Grace, 69 years old. Before the storm hit, I was just an ordinary mother and grandmother in the suburbs of Nashville. Every morning at 6 on the dot, I woke, brewed a cup of coffee in the old chipped pot I'd used for over 20 years, then sat quietly by the kitchen window. Through that pane with a scratch across it, I looked out at the backyard where the lilacs my husband once tended bloomed every April. That gentle sweetness was the only way I felt he was still here somewhere in this house. That simple life was woven from small routines, dusting the wedding photo every Sunday afternoon, adding oil to the old wooden desk lamp, watering the potted flowers, neatly lined along the porch. They might have seemed monotonous, but to me, they were a hidden current keeping my soul steady. For 45 years, I lived solely for Marcus, my only child. I worked night shifts at a garment factory, then took on laundry by day to send in his tuition. Many weekends, I stood at the flea market selling batches of corn cakes made from my mother's recipe, saving every penny so Marcus could have new textbooks. I swallowed my exhaustion, hoping my son would have a future unlike mine, a life beyond relentless labor. When Marcus married Celeste, an educated woman with polished speech, but a perpetually proud gaze, I chose silence and forced a smile, though my heart tightened. I believed that after my husband's death, my son and I would grow closer. I was naive. Instead of sharing our grief, Marcus grew distant. Phone calls dwindled, Sunday meals became a burden, and Celeste's every gesture radiated annoyance at having to face a country-old mother like me. Still, I persisted. I set a full table, spread the lace cloth I had embroidered in my youth, and cooked the dishes Marcus had adored as a boy. I believed that if we just sat together, he would remember the bond we once had. But the truth was crueler than I imagined. From those chilly dinners, a slow-moving tragedy unfurled, pushing me to the brink of losing everything. That afternoon, Nashville's sky was leaden, the clouds heavy with bad omens. I rose early to simmer chicken and dumplings, the dish Marcus had loved as a child, always grinning after lips slick with broth. I laid out the white lace tablecloth, carefully arranged a vase of yellow daisies from the morning farmer's market, hoping my son would feel a bit of warmth from home. When the door swung open, Dave, no, now my son-in-law, Marcus's husband, strode in with an air of entitlement. He flopped into the oak armchair that had once belonged to my husband and flicked on the TV as if the house were his. Celeste, wearing the olive green dress I'd given her for her last birthday, swept past the kitchen, her eyes cold as if the flowers didn't exist. "Mom, we need to talk." Celeste began, her tone strangely hard. Marcus sat beside her, eyes fixed on the screen, not bothering to turn. "This house, it's too big for you. You can't manage on your own. We've found a better place, a luxury nursing community with 24/7 nurses. You'll be taken care of properly." I froze. The spoon slipped from my hand, splashing broth onto the cloth. This house where Marcus had taken his first steps, where my husband and I had celebrated countless meals, where he had held my hand for the last time, was now too big, too inconvenient. "But this is our home. Our family's memories," I said, trembling, trying to keep calm. Celeste arched a brow, a thin smile. "Memories are in the heart, not on old walls. There you'll have peers' activities. It's best." Marcus stayed silent, offering a slight nod as if the decision had long been made. I searched his eyes for a familiar warmth and found only emptiness. Dave calmly scanned the room, eyes appraising like a new owner pricing assets. The floor seemed to ripple under my feet. The meal I had spent all day preparing still steamed, the daisies still bright, and no one cared. In that moment, I realized I was no longer mother nor family. I was an obstacle to be removed to make way for ambitions they called the future. In the days after that dinner, the house ceased to be a home and turned into a battleground. On Thursday morning, before I could finish washing the dishes, a stranger knocked. Gray suit, thick folder in hand, he entered with a chilly stare, marching through the rooms as if I were invisible. "The plumbing's too old," he muttered, taking notes. "Wood floors are rotting, need full replacement. Kitchen, outdated." Each judgment cut like a knife. I forced a stiff smile and explained that my husband had laid those kitchen tiles himself when Marcus was 10. But Dawn No Celeste only nodded along as if agreeing that everything was worthless. That afternoon, they brought glossy brochures, a retirement community with neatly clipped gardens, and the artificial smiles of elderly people around a chessboard. Celeste held them out. "Look, Mom, they even have yoga. You'll be happier there." I swallowed hard and shook my head, but their eyes were clear. This wasn't an invitation. It was a decree. Soon after, Marcus and Celeste arrived with a man who called himself a lawyer. He set a stack of documents on the table. "Mrs. Evelyn, this is the transfer paperwork. We just need your signature." I trembled. "Transfer?" "I thought you were going to sell the house." Celeste averted her gaze. "We're keeping it in the family. Don't worry." I understood immediately. They didn't just want me gone. They wanted ownership. The assets my husband and I had built over a lifetime had become spoils for their ambition. "I'm not signing," I said, my voice shaking but firm. The air went rigid. Marcus, the child I had once cradled, stood and spoke coldly. "Don't be stubborn, Mom. You're not exactly sound. Last week you forgot to turn off the gas." I exhaled sharply. A blatant lie. But Dave, my son-in-law, smirked, treating it as proof of incompetence. The lawyer cleared his throat. "If you don't cooperate, we'll have to consider a mental incapacity proceeding. At that point, decisions fall to the legal heir, your son." The sky collapsed. My own flesh and blood stood with an outsider ready to strip me of my home and my dignity. That night, the house was so silent that the ticking clock sounded shrill. I sat motionless in the oak armchair where my husband once rested after long shifts and let the tears fall. It felt like attending a funeral not for a person, but for the mother-son bond I had spent my life nurturing. The photos on the wall bore silent witness to my pain. Marcus in his graduation gown smiling beside a cake I had stayed up all night to make. Little Marcus learning to ride a bike, me running behind, steadying the seat. Those memories were now disowned by the very boy in them treated as trash to be swept away. I covered my face and whispered in despair, maybe they're right. I'm old, useless. Maybe I should leave and make it easier. The thought slid over me like a ghost, a strange community, a cramped room without the lilac scent my husband loved, without my son's familiar footsteps. Only strangers' faces weary and waiting out their days. I nearly accepted that fate until my eyes fell on the vase of daisies wilting on the table. I remembered my husband's sinewed hands planting the first seeds, his words, "Evelyn, never let anyone decide your worth. You are the keeper of this home's fire." That flame nearly snuffed, flared again. I wiped my tears. No, I would not end my life in humiliation. I had labored for decades, sacrificed my youth and health to build this home. I would not let Marcus and Celeste turn me into a helpless woman signing away a legacy like a scrap of paper. In that half-lit room, I felt a trace of my old pride. I vowed they would not take what was mine so easily. If I had to fight, I would. Alone if necessary. But fight I would. Saturday morning, as the first light filtered through the dusty kitchen window, I made my way to my late husband's old study, a room few had entered since he passed. The oak desk drawers creaked open to reveal scraps, utility bills, little notebooks. I was about to give up when I found a thin file tucked inside the old Bible he read before bed. The tiny lock was rusted. I searched everywhere until I discovered a small brass key in an empty cigarette tin. Heart pounding, I turned the key. The hinge sprang. Inside were documents I had never seen, savings books, land purchase contracts, and on top a notarized will from just 6 months before he died. Each line blazed before me. All assets, house, land, investments were bequeathed to me, Evelyn Grace, his sole wife. My son Marcus would inherit a small amount only if and only if he treated me with love and respect in my final years. I choked, hands shaking. My quiet husband had been more perceptive than I ever knew. He had foreseen our son's greed and decline. The next pages nearly made me collapse my name on the deed to an apartment building in downtown Nashville, where Marcus and Celeste were renting a luxury unit. Each month, the rent flowed into a separate bank account I had never known existed, now holding millions of dollars. There were also shares in a major construction firm where Celeste had bragged her husband had connections. I closed the file, tears spilling this time not of despair, but release. I had thought this old house was all I had left. In truth, my husband had quietly built a fortress around me. I then found one last letter tucked in the file. His familiar wavering handwriting, "Evelyn, if you're reading this, remember, strength is not for revenge, but for protection and teaching. If our child forgets filial piety, let truth be his way home." I pressed the letter to my chest. The spark in me had become a storm. They thought I was a frail old lady. They didn't know I was holding the whole board. Monday morning, a misting rain blurred the panes. When Marcus and Celeste arrived with a moving crew, I was already seated in the old armchair, calmly pouring tea into my chipped porcelain cup. They stepped in startled to see nothing packed. "Mom, the truck is waiting outside." Celeste frowned. "Haven't you boxed your things?" I lifted the cup, took a slow sip, letting the warmth spread in my throat. "There's nothing to pack. I'm not going anywhere." Marcus gave a dry laugh, irritation sparking in his eyes. Don't be stubborn, Mom. This decision is for your own good. The paperwork is ready. I set the cup down and stood slowly. You think I have no choice. In truth, you are the ones who don't. They stared briefly, unsettled. I walked to the desk and opened the leather case I'd prepared. Do you know where the rent for your luxury apartment has actually been going? I drew out the deed and set it on the table. Celeste grabbed it, hands trembling. No. Impossible, she stammered. It's true. I nodded evenly. I own the entire building, and I hold shares in the company where Marcus works. Your father planned carefully before he left this world. Marcus froze. His usual smug smile vanished. You're making this up. Believe what you like, I said, sliding bank records across the table. But black and white doesn't lie. Celeste blanched, looking at Marcus in panic. If this is true, I cut in, voice sharpening. You plotted to turn me into an incompetent fool and steal this home, but this is the least valuable asset I have. Don't mistake age for weakness. From now on, nothing in this house moves without my consent. Silence fell. Outside, the rain struck harder, drumming the windows like a cadence for this new game. For the first time, I saw fear flash in my son's eyes. In that instant, I knew the board had flipped. The air was so thick you could cut it. Marcus stood rigid, fists clenched. Celeste's eyes darted, searching for an escape. I kept my voice even, each word landing like a hammer on the flimsy wall they had built. You planned to make a fool of me, to have me sign everything away, I said, laying another file on the table. You never realized your father saw it all coming. He didn't just leave assets. He left a test of filial piety. Celeste turned pale and looked at her husband, voice wavering. Marcus, did you know about this? Marcus growled. Don't let her manipulate you. This is just a trick to keep the house. I looked straight into my son's eyes. Marcus, do you remember when you were 10 and burning with fever, I stayed up 3 nights holding you? You called me a hero. And now you invent a story about me forgetting the gas to strip me of my life. You believe your wife's lies over the memories you once called love. His eyes flickered, but he bit his lip and said nothing. Celeste burst into tears. Even so, her trembling voice tried to justify, I thought it was best. Dave, Marcus said you'd be safer. I didn't want you in danger. I let out a small bitter laugh. Safer. By cramming every memory into boxes, tossing them like trash, by lying, deceiving, turning me into a helpless case, Celeste collapsed into a chair, shoulders shaking. Marcus moved to slam his hand on the papers, but I stopped him, voice ice cold. Don't touch them. If you want a challenge, take them to court. Remember, every piece of evidence stands against you. A beat of silence. Then the unexpected Celeste lifted her head, eyes red and choked out. It was all because he forced me. Marcus made me do it. I just wanted to keep this family. Marcus spun toward her, stunned. The first crack showed plainly, and I knew their wall of lies was starting to crumble. The room erupted after Celeste's words. Marcus glared like a cornered beast. You're putting this all on me. You benefited too. Celeste trembled, clutching her belly as if seeking refuge. Tears streamed as she turned to me, voice thin. I'm sorry, Mom. But I had no choice. Marcus said if I didn't help convince you, he'd leave me. I was afraid of losing everything. And there's one more thing you need to know. She hesitated, exhaled, and the confession broke free. I'm pregnant. I froze my fingers, digging into the chair. The entire room collapsed into silence. Marcus's face drained. Celeste bowed her head, shoulders shaking. You are pregnant? I asked. Voice tight. She nodded, pleading. I planned to tell you later, but Marcus wanted to use the baby to force your signature. He said you'd soften if you knew you were about to have a grandchild. Marcus slammed the table. Lies. I never... You said it yourself. Marcus Celeste screamed defiant for the first time. You said if she wouldn't sign, we'd prove she's unstable and take custody. You even threatened to take me to court to establish guardianship. I did it all out of fear. I looked at them, a young couple exposing their rot in every sentence. Pain and anger mingled. My grandchild, my blood had become a bargaining chip. I drew a long breath, steadying myself. Congratulations, Celeste. But a child cannot erase what you've done. It deserves to be born into truth, not lies and greed. She buried her face in her hands. Marcus stared off hollow-eyed. In that moment, I understood this baby was the crossroads. Either they would relearn the meaning of family or plunge deeper into the mire. I gripped my husband's letter, recalling his words. Strength isn't to harm, but to protect and to teach. I swore this child would not be raised on the lies of its parents. The room was so stifling I could hear my own heartbeat. Celeste sobbed in the corner, clutching her belly when Marcus whipped around, eyes bloodshot. Enough, he shouted, voice cracking. You think those papers can change the truth? You're just a stubborn old woman refusing to make way for the young. I, not you, get to decide the future of this house and this family. I rose slowly, firmly. You're mistaken, Marcus. You claim family, yet you turn me into an extra. You claim a future, yet build it on lies. You call that responsibility, he snarled. You don't understand. I've had enough of being poor. Celeste needs a bigger house prestige, and I won't let anyone, not even you, stand in my way. If you're stubborn, I'll prove in court you're incompetent. I'll take everything. Celeste's head snapped up, panic-stricken. Marcus, are you insane? I've told her everything. We can't keep... Shut up, he roared, revealing the face he'd hidden beneath his respectable mask. You're just a tool like the thing in your belly. Everything serves my goals. The words fell like a blade. Celeste and I were struck dumb. Her shoulders trembled. She turned to me, eyes desperate. I inhaled, a strange calm filling me. Marcus. I said, my voice low but resonant. From today, I no longer recognize you as the boy who promised to protect me. You've chosen the road of lies and greed. You'll face the consequences. I stepped to the table and placed each document down, the building deed, bank statements, the will, and my husband's letter. You want court, fine. We'll go to court. But this time, I won't go alone. Celeste crumpled, sobbing. Marcus stood rigid, face ashen. The mask was off, and I knew the larger battle public under the law was about to begin. Court day came. Nashville was gloomy gray clouds like a mourning veil over the city. I wore a simple black dress pinned with the old silver brooch my husband gave me on our anniversary. Celeste sat beside me, hand on her belly, pallid, but no longer icy-eyed. Across the aisle, Marcus strode in confidently with a young lawyer in a blue suit, smirking as if victory were already his. The hearing began. Marcus's lawyer rose, booming, Your Honor, Mrs. Evelyn Grace is no longer competent to make decisions. Her son Marcus only wants to ensure her safety and care. This is compassion, not greed, as alleged. I sat quietly, seething inside. Then my attorney Victoria stood. She opened a file, voice clear. Your Honor, We have audio recordings, threatening messages, and property documents demonstrating Mr. Marcus's deliberate manipulation for seizure. Please play the recording. The courtroom filled with Marcus's husky, assertive voice. If she doesn't sign, I'll prove she's lost her mind. This house, these assets, they'll all be mine. Heads turned. A murmur rolled through the room. Marcus went pale, leaping up. Fabricated, edited. But Victoria continued calmly laying out the building deed bank confirmations and the valid will. At that moment, the judge, salt and pepper, hair-striking eyes looked up at me. He removed his glasses, voice thick with emotion. Mrs. Evelyn, don't you remember me? 30 years ago, I was a clerk intern at Family Court. You taught me how to organize files, brought me coffee on late nights. No one cared except you. I owe you that kindness. The room fell silent. Marcus stepped back, lips trembling. I nodded slightly, a hot tear spilling. The judge's gavel fell. No further debate is needed. Evidence is clear. Mr. Marcus committed attempted asset seizure and fabricated claims regarding his mother's mental state. Legal ownership remains with Mrs. Evelyn Grace. Mr. Marcus is barred from contacting his mother and wife pending separation judgment. Court adjourned. The gavel's crack rang like a bell of deliverance. I drew a long breath. After months of humiliation, justice had finally spoken my name. After the hearing, Marcus vanished like a shadow erased from my life. Local papers reported the case describing him with harsh words, greedy fabricator unfilial. Each word carved into the reputation I had tried so long to protect for my son. It hurt, but I knew the price matched his choices. Celeste was different. As we stepped out of court, she halted on the steps, cradling her now pronounced belly. Her face was pale, but her gaze had lost its arrogance. "Mom," she whispered, voice on the verge of breaking. "I know I don't deserve it, but I have no one but you. I'm sorry." I looked at the young woman who had once stared at me coldly, speaking as if my existence should be erased. Now her eyes brimmed, her trembling hand pressed to her stomach. I understood this child needed a beginning different from the deceit sown by its parents. "Sorry isn't enough, Celeste," I said evenly. "If you truly want to make it right, start with how you raise this child. It doesn't need the shadow of greed. It needs to know love and respect." She nodded repeatedly, tears streaming. "I promise. I'll change. I don't want my child repeating our mistakes." In the days that followed, Celeste moved into the old house with me. At first, the air between us was stifling, only the clock's ticking and the kettle's whistle. Gradually, I noticed small gestures. A cup of ginger tea left each morning, blankets folded neatly after sleep, a gentle hand on my shoulder when I looked tired. Awkward, yes, but signs of a beginning. One evening, as I watered the lilacs on the porch, Celeste whispered, "I know I can't erase what I've done, but please, let me prove myself. Not for me, for the baby." I looked at the purple blossoms trembling in the breeze. My husband had said lilacs can bloom again each season as long as their roots hold. Perhaps families are the same. I thought the judgment had closed the book. I was wrong. One September afternoon, as dry winds swept the porch, the doorbell rang. I opened it. Marcus stood there. Hair unkempt, wrinkled suit eyes bloodshot like a man sleepless for days. He looked at me, gaze both pleading and menacing. "Mom," he rasped, "we need to talk." I gripped the door frame to steady myself. The court said everything that needed saying. He laughed, a jagged sound. "Court's rule on paper. I'm still blood. I won't let you and Celeste take everything from me. The baby in her belly. It's mine. You'll let it grow up not knowing its father." My heart sank. True, the child carried Marcus's blood, but I remembered the judge's words and my husband's letter. Strength is not for revenge, but to teach and protect. Marcus. I sighed. You can be a father by loving, by truly being present. You chose greed and lies. A child doesn't need a father like that. He stepped closer, voice low. You think you've won with a few papers, I'll take it all back. I know people you know I do. Another lawsuit, a few accusations. You'll never have peace in this house. Celeste emerged from the kitchen holding her belly, voice shaking. Marcus, stop. Don't drag me and our son into this. He snapped toward her eyes, flaring. What do you know? You betrayed me in court and dare speak now. I stood between them, facing him. Enough. If you continue, I won't hesitate to use every legal protection for myself and my grandchild. Hate me if you must, but don't heap more sins on the child. He fell silent, shoulders trembling, then left the door shuddering in his wake. Celeste clutched my arm, sobbing. He'll come back. I'm scared. I looked at the garden lilacs swaying in the evening wind. I knew this wasn't the end, but this time I was ready. Marcus would no longer face a solitary mother. He would face a new family where truth had taken root. 2 weeks later, the manager of the apartment building where Marcus and Celeste once lived called. His voice trembled. Mrs. Evelyn, your son. He's downstairs causing a scene demanding entry to the unit. I stifled a sigh. I knew this day would come. I put on my wool cardigan and went with Celeste. Her belly was prominent. Each step was heavy, but her eyes were steadier than ever. In the lobby, Marcus stood amid murmuring residents. His eyes were bloodshot, breath heavy with alcohol. On seeing me, he shouted, You have no right to throw me out. I'm your son. I'm the owner here too. I stepped forward, voice calm. Marcus, the documents say otherwise. This is legally inherited property. You no longer have any rights. He sneered, pulling crumpled papers from his pocket. I have witnesses' documents. I'll prove you're not competent. The court will hear me. Before he could finish, a woman's voice cut in. Excuse me, I must clarify. All eyes turned as Attorney Victoria, who had stood by me, stepped from the seats. She held a new file. This is confirmation from the Tennessee Supreme Court. Full ownership of these assets belongs to Mrs. Evelyn Grace. Furthermore, the previous case clearly established Mr. Marcus's coercive conduct. The crowd murmured. Marcus turned ashen, but still spat. They're biased. They don't understand. I'm the one carrying the family. Pain mingled with anger as I looked at him. Carrying the family. Do you forget that at 13 you cried for fear of losing our roof, and I borrowed every dollar to keep it? I carried both of us. Now you want to erase that labor. My words pierced his memory. He stepped back, eyes wavering. Celeste moved forward, voice tight. Marcus, look at me. What are you doing to our child? Do you want it raised in the darkness of lies? He couldn't answer. The building manager said softly, Sir, if you don't leave, we'll call the police. For the first time, Marcus bowed his head, shoulders heavy. He staggered out, leaving a silent crowd behind. I stood still, tears stinging. I felt no joy, only emptiness. The son I raised with blood and tears had become a stranger. In that moment, I understood sometimes the law doesn't only protect rights, it tolls a bell for wandering souls. The final hearing took place on a bitter winter morning. Nashville's sky was gray. Wind howled through the courtroom windows as if heralding a weighty end. I sat in the front row clutching my husband's letter, the only talisman steadying my trembling heart. Celeste sat beside me, cradling her belly, eyes sunken but resolute. Marcus entered, gaunt suit hanging, loose hair disheveled. The arrogance was gone, but ambition still burned in his eyes. His lawyer repeated the old claims that I was incompetent, that Celeste controlled me, that all assets must revert to the legal heir. When Victoria rose, she opened each file deliberately. Her voice rang. "Your Honor, we've fully presented evidence of Mr. Marcus Grace's coercion and deceit. Today we request testimony from a special witness." The door opened. A middle-aged man strode in, poised, eyes bright. My heart leapt. Judge David Morales, once a trainee under me. He stood tall. I appear not only as a former colleague, but as someone who received Mrs. Evelyn's kindness. She taught me that justice lives not just on paper, but in how we treat one another. I affirm Mrs. Evelyn is fully competent and deserves protection. Silence blanketed the room. Sweat beaded on Marcus's pallid face. The presiding judge struck the gavel 3 times, voice resounding. "The court rules that all assets remain the lawful property of Mrs. Evelyn Grace." Mr. Marcus Grace is barred from contacting his mother and ex-wife for 5 years. His unfounded claims are dismissed. Court adjourned. The gavel cracked like thunder slicing the sky. I closed my eyes, warmth flooding my body. After months of degradation and pressure, justice finally stood with me. As we left, Celeste gripped my hand, tears spilling. I know I don't deserve it, but I'll do everything to make it right. I want the child to grow up in the light, not in his father's darkness. I nodded, eyes wet. In that moment, the weight crushing my heart dissolved. It wasn't victory. It was release. 6 months after the ruling, the old suburban house wore a new face. Each morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains, shining on the lilac trellis in full bloom. I still brewed coffee in the chipped porcelain pot and watered the beds my husband left behind, but the loneliness was gone. In the living room, a newborn's cry broke the familiar quiet. Celeste cradled the baby, dark circles under tender eyes. The girl was named Hope, Hope itself. Celeste chose it, a silent act of atonement. At first, I kept my distance, afraid I'd soften too quickly. But every time Hope grasped my finger, tiny hand clinging as if never to let go, my heart trembled. The child was blameless. She deserved to grow in love, not to be used as a pawn. Celeste changed day by day. She rose early to cook not fancy meals, but my simple recipes: corn cakes, chicken and mushroom soup. She patiently learned to sew, even asking to sit with me as I mended the old lace cloth. Sometimes she froze, eyes glistening when touching items woven with family memories. One weekend afternoon, as I read thank you letters from single mothers supported by the new charity, Celeste approached softly. "Please let me join. I want to help women who made mistakes like I did, so they can have a second chance." In her eyes, I saw sincerity, remorse turning into action. The lilacs rustled as if my husband were sending a message. Flowers can bloom again as long as the roots live. Our family, too. From ruins, a tender shoot had emerged. 5 years since the case closed, my life has quietly entered a new chapter. Nashville has changed, but in our little house, old rhythms remain. I still brew coffee in the chipped pot, still tend the lilacs on the porch. The difference is I no longer sit alone in the mornings. Hope now 4 dashes around the garden, waving freshly picked daisies. Grandma, look, she chirps, and each time warmth stitches my old wounds. Celeste has changed too. She returned to school, finished her accounting degree, and joined a small firm. Evenings, she's in the kitchen with me cooking and recounting meetings and fussy clients, confidence shining in eyes I'd never seen that way before. The charity Home and Dignity I founded 2 years ago has opened its third house, sheltering 15 more elderly women cast off by their families. I file every thank you letter in a wooden box as proof that my pain wasn't in vain. Some had nearly given up. With a roof and shared compassion, they found life again. In them, I see my reflection from the darkest years. Marcus. I rarely hear news. They say he moved to another state, living quietly, avoiding the public eye. Sometimes I wonder if he ever wakes at night, regret gnawing at him. Then I realize that burden is no longer mine. The lesson was given. Whether he learns it is up to him. One evening when a crimson sunset washed over the garden, Hope curled in my lap, eyes bright. Grandma, tell the story of the brave grandmother. I smiled, stroked her hair, and began as always a woman who seemed to lose everything, but rose to protect her home and her dignity. I know I didn't just keep a house. I kept a legacy, courage, love, and the belief that even at the bottom we can rewrite our story. This time it is a story of peace.